grief. And a few things that I did just to kind of give you insight when I've had losses, maybe things I've done, because I get questions from you that, is this okay? Or should I be feeling this way? And I want you to know that some of this is okay, what you're feeling and where you're at in your journey. So grief does not even begin, and has been clinically proven, for a good 2 weeks after a death. There is this fog and hazy period that you go through, and you're not processing, things are not sinking in. So when someone stands at a funeral 2 days after a death and they say, oh yeah, I'm working through the grief hasn't begun, because you're working through the steps you have to during that time, rather than going into the emotional journey you have to begin. And it doesn't matter if you do a direct cremation with no services, thinking you can bypass the grief will find you eventually. It just does. It catches up with you. It'll be when you least expect it, but it will happen. So grief comes, and there's all these different phases, and there's many books out there and there's many theories about what those exact phases are, but everybody reacts differently. Even if you take, let's say, two 50-year-old women who are dentists, and they both have 2 children, and their husbands, who are 53, die of massive heart attacks unexpectedly. They seem to be on the same journey, but they could react completely differently. Just because they've lost their spouse and they have children and they work in the same profession, or they're from small towns, or whatever it may be, the grief journey is individual. It is not the same for any 2 people, for any 2 parents, for any 2 children, for any 2 siblings, for any 2 aunts, uncles, cousins, anyone. It is not the same. So we've talked before where people say, oh, I know what you're feeling. I lost my husband, or I lost my child. And it's not. You don't know what that person's feeling, because it's individual. It's only felt within that one person, which I think is what I love about this business and working with families, is because you have to connect with each person completely differently when I'm working with them at the funeral home, because they are on their own paths. And I don't know if it's the psychology degree that I connect with at that moment, and that unknown, because we can't pinpoint this one cut and dry thing that everybody is doing, because it is so individual. So I think that I love that about the processes, because I have to try to figure out how I can best help each person in the moment that they're in. And then through the next year or 2, even as I'm seeing people and seeing where they're at in their process. So I hear from thousands of people, whether it's through the YouTube, or through the families I've cared for, or through other funeral directors and the work they do, or for social workers, psychologists, everyone. But the 1-year mark is often the hardest. You've gone through every first by that point. You've gone through first birthday without them. You've gone through your first anniversary, your first holidays, all your firsts. So then you're heading into this next second year where people kind of expect that you're going to be past that lost. Well, you should be moving on. You should be doing your own thing now. You should be better. Those are all words that can hurt when somebody says them, because you may not feel like moving on at that moment. You may not feel like you're better, and you may not feel like you want to do new things. You may not have cleaned out the closet from your spouse's clothing. You may not have touched your child's room at that point, because it's too much. It's too much to do. So it's all what is working for you. But if at a year you're still not getting out of bed, if you're still not functioning, you're not eating right, you're not socializing, you've retreated, then you do need to find some help and trying to have someone help you get into a normal routine. And by normal, I mean, if you usually go to work, then you need to be going to work. If you have a family that you're caring for, you need to be caring for the family. You need to get back into what you usually did without that person around, and you need to find your new normal. But not getting out of bed cannot be your new normal, because that person would not want you to be that person. They would not want you to give up your life because they're gone in most situations. So you need to see where you're at and in what time frame you're at. If after a month they're still in bed, my gosh, maybe that's what you need. But if it's a year, then maybe evaluate where you're at and talk to somebody. If it's 2-3 years, definitely talk to somebody. So I just encourage you to look at where you're at in your journey and see what you may need to get to where you want to be. And maybe you're not happy with where you're at. You need to evaluate that though and see. I can't tell you what to do. I can't tell you where you need to be because I don't know you. I don't know your story. I don't know where you're at. So it's, like I said, it's individual. So we all know I've talked about my niece Kelly and when she died, and everybody in my family did something different, to connect and to get past. So I found myself, I have this hair tie, and I wore this hair tie for a year after she died on my wrist. I just put it on and it was kind of like a bracelet, and I just wore it and I wore it and I wore it. And it was a while, a couple months down the road, I was like, I've just been wearing this bracelet. It was just kind of like it was there and it connected me to her. It just was a little part of her that was always with me. And I wore it, and at the 1 year mark, I decided that it was time to take it off. One, I didn't want it to break because I knew I would be just devastated as if I lost that piece of her. And so I took it off and put it in a special place. But it was just something I did, and it helped me. It helped me get through that year somehow. And it seems silly and small, and it's pretty tattered and weathered, but it is what it is, it helped me for a long time. So my grandpa, when he died, he had this watch, and one of my visits to the nursing home, he said, my battery died and nobody will fix it. That's probably not the case. But so I took it and I got a new battery and stuff, and brought it back to him and stuff. And so when he died, I got his watch. And so for a long time I wore this watch. And it's a men's, just nothing special to it. I often have to push it way up on my arm here so that it fit right. But I wore it for quite a while because it connected me to him in a small little way that I knew. Just like wearing the hair tie, nobody knew what that represented but me. I didn't need to wear my grief, like a t-shirt that said, hey, I lost somebody and I feel like crap, It was just these small little things. So, some people connect to the person by holding on to that initial pain because they're afraid if they move past that initial pain, they're going to lose the person. So I encourage, if that's what you're doing, maybe find something from their life to connect to. Rather, find purpose from during their life and connect to that, rather than connecting and holding on to that end point into that pain and focusing on what came before that. All the points that brought you joy and happiness and celebrated what they did in their life rather than the end. There's so many things we go through when we lose somebody, and connecting to that end point is no fun. We don't want to remember that part because it's the part that hurts the most in our world. And so I had one family I worked with, and they had a loss, and I didn't know how they were going to move past. It was one of those that I prayed for them, I hoped for them, I wanted the best for them moving forward because I didn't know how they were going to get past it. And they turned and did some of the most amazing, beautiful things out of that person's death, and are helping thousands of other people because of that death. And so I love that when I didn't know how somebody could come out of that darkness, they amazed me. I got goosebumps right now. They amazed me and turned it and did so much good for somebody else. And so every person's loss is not going to maybe equivalent to that, but there are great things that can be done for yourself and within your own life from a loss, even if in the darkness you can't see them. So start with something small, like a little, with a hair tie or a watch or something, and move forward. Do what you need to do, and know that there's more for you, and it's not just that darkness, because that darkness will move out of the way like a fog, and you will get to a better place. Thanks, guys.